Scourge Eternal Blackout Issue 5. So Buns is faced with two people with sonic speed, one of which crisscrossed the entire planet tons of times for a mere race, and Shadow, who can teleport and freeze time. I'm gonna give the comics the benefit of the doubt because I like it so much and assume that the anti-Shadow doesn't even know he has chaos control. Too bad he's gonna use it eventually anyways. It's always a standard problem for Shadow that he never thinks to teleport a part of his enemy away or teleport them away, and barely ever even thinks to freeze time. We always have to assume that he's just not creative enough to think of that. Most people would think to just use their fists. So Shadow's too stupid to use chaos control on Buns. Fine. He probably doesn't know he can use it that way. He probably doesn't know he can use it as a weapon. As for Scourge, judging by I'm clearly teasing Buns here, he's not taking her seriously. Maybe he wants her alive so that he can keep having fun with her. And besides, I think her mecha survived a spin dash from him before. I guess it makes sense that he doesn't hate her enough to rapidly homie attack her mech suit at sonic speed and win against her in one attempt at an attack. He thinks she's such a terrible person that she should be made fun of when she's trying to get sympathy for NIDS after everything she's done, but he just teased her. He's not angry at her the whole time. He doesn't hate her nearly as much as he could. So combine that with the fact that he never simply immediately killed the heroes with his sonic speed, passing up dozens of chances to do that. And it could make sense for his character that he'd just run away from Buns, and not ruin her mecha in a place where Kindabor probably couldn't get to her and doom her to die in the basement. He's not that cruel. At least not right away. I know he used to be called Evil Sonic, but he didn't start out as evil as Fleetway Evil Sonic, who wanted to kill Sonic and take over his second planet on the first appearance. So I never took him seriously as an Evil Sonic. Scourge could easily just run around her and keep homie attacking her, dodging all of her attacks with his sonic speed, and eventually wear her mecha down to nothing with his sonic force attacks. If he's gonna focus on evading her instead, and it'll take forever for her to get beaten, it has to be because he'll be holding back. As for Anti-Shadow, it's harder to understand why he'd hold back instead of being as vicious as possible, since he's past caring about anybody. So why won't he constantly homie attack her right away? But I guess he'll want to stay with Scourge since he agreed to, so he'd run alongside him because he's avoiding her. I guess he's too lazy to just try to destroy the mecha right away. Scourge was never the type to choose to try to kill someone, since he kept Antoine alive with his gang for months just fine. I wanted to move on with the story right away, but I just had to say all of this to make sense of this plot first. Because I know Scourge could easily beat Buns here, and Shadow definitely could, but that's in theory. They'd have to want to enough. I just can't understand why Shadow doesn't want to. Buns focuses on threatening Scourge first, before finally being confused at seeing Shadow. I'm probably just gonna stick to saying Shadow because it's faster than Anti-Shadow. Shadow makes a dirty joke I'm surprised he'd make, especially with how little experience he's had with the world. But it's supposed to make sense because he's a different version of Shadow. It's also because, oh, he's the edgy anti-hero. Still, there's a reason there isn't dialogue like this in canon. And really, he's a science experiment who probably has no real social experience. Why would he even know where babies come from? Of course, Scourge taunts her on missing her attack because he's so fast. Him teasing her about their past relationship just highlights the emptiness of the fact that we were never shown why they even started dating in the first place. He's just referencing past events I never saw. I only ever saw her hating him, and for some reason Alicia thought it was real lame with him before that because he didn't think of a way past the force field, instead of Boomer thinking of that. Somehow Buns is fast enough to catch Scourge's spin dash when it'd move it over 600 miles per hour and not get sent flying from the momentum of it afterwards, or get damaged from catching it. I have to assume that the spin dash has to take some time to accelerate to the speed of sound, and it's slow enough right after he starts doing it that it makes sense. I never seem to like seeing this. Even if he was slower than sound when doing this and not running, when he clearly fights faster than Sonic in terms of melee attacks, since he creams them in fights, he'd still be fast enough that you wouldn't be able to react fast enough to catch a spin dash. Why doesn't he just run away and not bother trying to fight her? He'd completely leave her in the dust and get away from her. But then Anti-Shadow would call him a chicken. And it is smart to put her mech suit out of commission for a while so she wouldn't bother him later. Maybe he's assuming that Kindabor was smart enough to have a spare mech suit for her, since he's supposed to be a genius. Then after Scourge attacks her directly once, and then has to dodge her attacks, Shadow knocks her down without us getting to see him directly impact her, and insults him for doing poorly, and he says, "You think I don't want to do that? Is that suspiciously specific denial?" Naturally, he says that he could easily slice the metal in half if his spines weren't shaved down. So they waste time arguing when she could potentially get up at any moment, and Shadow offends him by suggesting a retreat from the battle. Right after saying he's not a coward, he changes his mind when she gets up and runs away, since he is scared, but that's smart of him, and that's what really matters. It's smarter to recognize when you're actually in danger and not be overconfident about it. Shadow and Scourge make it clear that with all of these corridors, they don't know how to get out of here. Shadow's never been above ground, just outside Kintobor's tower, so of course he wants to be able to imagine himself there. Then Buns throws something at them, and magically catches up to people who can run insanely fast all across the world. To be fair, she's in a mecha suit, and Kintobor's a genius. I guess it could make sense that he made her about as fast as Scourge in it, because why wouldn't he if he could? He could have used an anarch barrel. I'd say that should be outright stated if it's true, but saying it here makes it pretty obvious how fast she is. It's just confusing because I once have imagined Buns to be even half as fast as Scourge in that big bulky mecha suit. Omega was only fast in the games because that was gameplay in a Sonic game, so it had to be fast to be fun. Also, Scourge can't literally run as fast as he can here because he's trapped in the corridors indoors, so he'd run into a wall and die. He's only running so fast that he'll be able to react to a wall in time. That would slow them down, having to be constrained to the small space of however big an area the basement is. Buns being able to catch up with them in any situation is confusing at first, even if it is impressive of Kintobor. I'm proud of him for doing that. Omega was faster than Sonic in Sonic 06. Shadow taunts Scourge for not having a plan to deal with Buns. Again, there's someone being unfair to him for that reason, when he's not really the brainy plans expert. What is he supposed to do when he's exhausted every option? He already tried running around her in a circle, and that just dropped him down. If he ran around her again to try to create a tornado around her, he might just break the floor and drop down even further, if the rules are being consistent. Unless he can't go any further, and he just reveal the dirt below the floor, which Sonic can drill into with a spin dash. This floor isn't as easy to destroy. The point is, trying to run around her failed and got him hit, so that might be why he's not doing it. She hits them with sonic waves and makes them fall over, but lucky for Scourge, he's not unconscious. I understand that Shadow's just really stupid. Maybe he genuinely thinks he can't use Chaos Control without a magical emerald in most of the franchise, but it's still pretty pointless and counterproductive to have Shadow round if he's never going to use Chaos Control until the writer decides to, randomly. Or even Chaos Blast, or Chaos Spear. I guess all of those powers are completely broken as far as stories go. Then the only thing he's ever going to contribute is being someone to make fun of Scourge. Hasn't he been through enough? Shadow treats him worse than Sonic did. There's a crash sound effect, and Scourge is sent flying away, and again, I get annoying vagueness instead of proper world building. As Buns says that Scourge messed up the world the last time he was free. Exactly how did he? I'm not sure I'd want to know, because him even being written to take over the world in the first place was jarringly out of character for someone who's nothing but a harmless rival to Sonic up to that point. I can't imagine what he'd actually do in that position. She doesn't elaborate on what she thinks he did wrong at all, making there be no point in her saying that. The words Kintobor's Tower, Gerald, and Professor make an impact on Shadow. Then Shadow appears in front of Buns in a blue light. I guess that's Chaos Control, only not portrayed as a green flash of light like it actually is. So it's more confusing. But it really does prove that Shadow's an idiot just to force the plot then. Because if he was creative enough, he could have just teleported Buns' mech suit away from her right away. It's not like he can only teleport himself, because he teleported Rouge out of that vault in SA2. He's told that she's in charge of keeping an eye on the tower while Kintobor's out. So he throws her, and says that anyone who allies with Kintobor faces his wrath. So he wishes that he was never created? Once he let himself die then? I thought he'd appreciate his creator. Gerald Robotnik would have been evil from the start in this universe, and therefore only made him to be a weapon. Of course he'd be ignorant enough to assume Kintobor's evil in this world with no experience with it. But the plot could have easily gone differently if he asked her what Kintobor was like first, instead of attacking her. But apparently this guy is just too quick to attack people, since he did it to Scourge right away for no good reason. Scourge has a surprisingly charming line where he says she wants an encore and asks for a duet from Shadow. I have to remind myself not to feel sorry for Buns here, since this is the same person who said about the evil castle of Alicia that she sees the freedom to do whatever she wants, and she wished she had missiles in her mega suit, and she smirked and called the heroes do-gooders. So she's still murderous and wants to get to do whatever she wants, even if Kintobor's forcing her to not do evil things. That's not her idea at all. She wants to do evil things again because she has to humor Kintobor, but she's not actually a good person regardless. He could run away, but she'd never stop trying to kill him, so he's defending himself. Finally, these two think to create a tornado against her. I guess they were too intimidated of her when she first started the fight to be inspired to try such a move right away. And again, running around her just backfired on him at first. Scourge never did this to the heroes before. It makes him look even less evil then, that he spent his entire time fighting the heroes refusing to use a tornado move on them because that'd be too cruel. They attack her again, and Scourge acts charmingly proud of himself in a dorky way, and trails off while saying he has to give credit to Shadow. Because Buns was up against two people with sonic speed, I came into this pretty worried about whether it actually makes sense as a plot, because it was so obvious Scourge and Shadow would effortlessly beat Buns in theory. But that's only when you consider their abilities, not what they'd be motivated to actually do. I've been able to make this story make sense a lot of the time when I was confused by it. But it's so confusing that Shadow was holding back. Scourge wonders where Shadow went, and sees him walk towards Buns menacingly. And for some reason there's buzzing sounds in Buns' speech. I guess all along I was expected to believe that rather than people being able to hear a voice from the other side of her mech suit, the mech suit was always soundproof, so she needs speakers and a microphone to project and record her voice in it. It was implied by the shape of her text boxes in the Archie comic. It sure is convenient that the buzzing only happens when it doesn't obscure the words she's saying. Buns is scared of him and tells him to get back, probably not being able to make the mech suit run away or fight. Shadow uses his powers and we can see her face, and he says he has a message to Kintobor, and he suddenly renames himself Sanctum. The name Scourge I kinda get, but what does the word Sanctum have to do with anything? In the sanctum of his own home. That's what I'm thinking of, and that doesn't sound menacing. It sounds comforting. It's portrayed like he's trying to give himself a new name to be edgy and spite Kintobor, which makes sense, but the word Sanctum doesn't mean anything bad, does it? So it just failed. Is it foreshadowing that he's gonna become a hero later? Because that's a bit too obvious. It makes sense that a living weapon would have fangs, but I still don't like it because he already looks menacing, and he'd hurt his mouth if he bit the inside of it by mistake. I get giving him a new name because it finally solves the problem I've had with him where I've just been calling him Shadow because it's faster. He still looks mostly like Shadow anyways, so won't I feel like calling him that anyways? Because he doesn't look like a Sanctum, he looks like a Shadow. The writing shows no self-awareness because Scourge says the name Sanctum isn't bad, which would only make sense if he had no idea what the word Sanctum means. Temple, shrine, retreat, office, den, refuge. That's what the thesaurus says about it. This name would only make sense if this guy planned on being a hero. But in universe, maybe Scourge is just trying to humor him. It's shockingly convenient that this guy who hates Kintobor so much didn't kill Buns. It really seems like it could have led to that, with all the damage Scourge did to the mech suit, and the fact that he boasted and then we didn't see her. It's a relief because that would have been too dark. And I can understand Scourge not killing her because he spent almost his entire time as a character not finishing his enemies off, even when super. I'm relieved, but this had no foreshadowing. Scourge asks where the exit is, and Sanctum grabs his jacket, and Scourge arbitrarily tells him to go easy on the jacket when all he's doing is holding it. And then Sanctum uses Chaos Control to warp away. What took him so long? He's saying Anarchy Control when he wants to know that Chaos Energy was renamed Anarchy Energy by Scourge. The only way this could make sense is if it actually wasn't renamed by Scourge, and always had that name. But that was never implied. I don't remember the Chaos Emeralds that powered Atlantean Apollos being called Anarchy Barrels. But I don't know, maybe the Chaos Energy of those gems was never called Chaos Energy, but it wouldn't make much sense to call it Anarchy Energy when they're called Chaos Emeralds. An entire page is wasted on Buns pressing a button to send a distress signal to Kintobor. You'd think she would have done that the first chance she got. I guess she was blinded by rage and didn't think to do that, and thought for sure that she'd beat Scourge. But still, the longer she'd take to press the button, the more time it'd take to get back to her. I wanted to see where Scourge got warped to instead. The writer fortunately explains in the description that Buns isn't gonna die, she's just exhausted. Wait, why? It was her mech suit taking all the damage. She was barely moving at all, she was just pressing buttons and levers. Anyways, after a page is wasted on the Destructrix lamp shading that Scourge has been in the tower for way too long, making me wonder how they had the patience to wait this long while doing nothing, we see that Sanctum warped Scourge to outside the tower, even though he's never been here before. So how is he able to accurately imagine the place and tell his powers exactly where to take him? Maybe his chaos control works in a way where he can just tell it to send him forwards a certain distance. And it sends him into his space-time bending wormhole that sends him out the other side of it. He doesn't have to imagine anything. Scourge asks the Destructrix if they miss him, and is clearly sad that they just stayed silent. This makes him look lonely since he didn't like the Destructrix back in prison, and yet he wants even them to miss him. Then it makes it clear that he's happy to see Fiona again, proving that he's fully capable of missing her. And he says a cringy line after that because he thinks it'll make him look cool and cares too much about that. At least the writer acknowledges that the line was cringy. I've missed when he was well written like this, making it clear that he wants people to care about him. And it's subtle about it. He's not just annoying Sonic and working for a bad guy. Fiona disappoints him and me by quickly pushing him ahead to have a talk with him in private. Probably about the fact that Sanctum's here. When is she gonna act like his girlfriend already? She asks what Shadow's doing here, somehow not immediately assuming that this is an alternate universe Shadow. You'd think she'd know he wasn't Shadow right away from the fact that he's wearing that stupid outfit. Scourge also warns her not to call him Shadow, clearly not wanting her to face the consequences. He says he's part of the gang now, and she reluctantly humors him. Fiona awkwardly tries to greet him politely and shake his hand. It shows her trust issues without being annoying about it. Then Scourge has bad social skills in a cringe-worthy way, saying they're already getting along, laughing for no reason and having his arms around both of them, showing his affectionate side because he even does this for this guy he has no reason to like. I like that she smiles about it, but he wouldn't laugh. And the writer knowing it was out of character doesn't make it okay. He says he got what he was asked to get. Fiona says he still pulled through despite his radio being stolen, and Scourge says huh as she plans to tell Finitivis the mission was completed. It's good that she was loyal enough to tell him Flying Frog stole his radio instead of keeping it from him. Scourge sarcastically calls Finitivis' place to the doctor's office to feel better about going there. And as he's prepared to go into the portal, Sanctum stands there with his back to him for some reason. He finally goes into the portal, and we see a hedgehog in silhouette standing on the tree branch for no reason. Oh good, it's not Sonic. It's Silver. And the writer had the creativity to give him a different design. He says he's the Lightbringer. I hope he's right here, because it wouldn't require any creativity to do the thing where Silver's wrong again. And I'd love if Scourge was actually a prophesized hero for a change, if it meant that he didn't say a bad guy. It'd be too predictable if Silver was wrong when we already saw that in 06, and even there he wasn't entirely wrong. Sonic did have something to do with Iblis's release, and it was just indirectly. It'd also be too predictable if Sanctum was the Lightbringer, which I assumed right away since it'd be ironic to call Shadow a Lightbringer. And Shadow is known for being a villain who turns good and then temporarily going evil again for the Shadow game rather than staying at one alignment. So for all we know, him not staying one alignment forever could be a universal trait with him where it's more like he's neutral, selfish. Shadow turned on the world because someone he knew died. He only became a hero again because someone he knew would want that. He was always focused on the person he grew up around that made up his original view of the world. So it's not like he's really about everyone else and the greater good. He didn't become good from thinking about humanity as a whole. Knuckles is also not known for thinking about humanity as a whole, and instead only focused on his island and guarding the emeralds there. So he was so neutral that he refused to give Sonic his spare emerald at first, even though it could help Sally's father. And his counterpart from the evil dimension is a pacifist. Predictably, this story from Scourge's best buddy was about Scourge and Shadow easily defeating Buns in a fight and escaping Kintobor's tower. Lucky for Buns, she survives, because neither of them are that evil, and there's absolutely no lampshading of that fact and elaboration on it. It's confusing of evil Shadow to hold back when he has absolutely no reason to. I just have to assume Shadow's too stupid to think that he can just chaos control to teleport the mech apart. like summon portals where the mech is. He could easily get rid of it that way. Not to mention he could just warp her to the Ark. But Shadow's usually an idiot, so I guess it's in character at this point. The reason they're able to escape is because eventually they decide to do a tornado around Buns, and Shadow uses Chaos Control to warp away. That makes me wonder what took them so long. I just have to assume what took them so long was that they're just that scared of Buns, and apparently she's fast enough to keep up with them, because Mexu's just that well made. So they're so focused on directly attacking her that they didn't think to do stuff that wasn't attacking. I guess it makes sense. The story was better than I thought it would be. But again, I'd much rather see them go to Finitibus and see what they do with him there, because that's what we've always been waiting for. And instead, the first 3 issues were Scourge interacting with another guy who has a spin dashing ability and sonic speed, who doesn't even treat him well.